What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I got a great comment this morning I was reading on the channel about Luke oil stocks, and this individual's brokerage account wanted them to move their Russian oil stock holdings to another brokerage. And I thought, yep, we're here now. The Intra elite fighting has begun. I'm gonna break that down for you and give you a mental model here in the next 90 seconds so you can look at things as they start to unfold and you'll be like, damn, okay, now I see how things are all the pieces are starting to play together. End game here, watch for an American Caesar. Let me break this down. We've got this thing right now where equities are held by third parties. And what I mean by this is almost everything is held by third parties. Let's say you own X on stock in a 401k or just a regular stock account. Some brokerage owns that and transacts those purchases and sell orders for you on your behalf because they have some sort of special in with the exchanges, meaning like they're a registered broker or licensed or whatever. Who really knows like what you have to be like a Fidelity or a Morgan Stanley or anything like that. So what we do is we essentially have these third parties that are in between us and our things we own. Now in a better financial system, the way that this would work would be I could have a company, call it Trav company, and I would have I'd probably be able to ICO it, I'd be able to do an initial coin offering and just say, hey, there's gonna be 1,000 shares or 1,000 coins or 1,000 whatever you want to call them of this particular company. And you can buy them and hold them and custody them yourself, just like Bitcoin, just like any type of crypto like that, where it's like, yep, I have it in my wallet, and if I want to exchange it, it's 24/7. I get on my phone, flip it over here, sell it there. There would be no capital constraints, meaning if I want to buy something in Russia or I wanted to sell that to someone that lived in India, 24/7 market, right? There wouldn't be a stop button like there is at the New York Stock Exchange. Like if it falls more than 15% in a certain amount of time or 20%, it just turns off. Like there's a kill switch. So it can't crash 80% in one day. It would have to take a few days to do it, and it would just be stopping out. That's the boomer system. That's this system left over from these baby boomers that we have running everything right now, and it's just become increasingly obvious as to what it is. It's just this really corrupt group of super elites that have no rules. There's no justice whatsoever in the system. There's no accountability. We don't have any bankers that went to jail in 2008 for all the havoc that they caused. We don't have anyone that's going to jail now for all the counterfeiting that they do, but they call it quantitative easing. But you guys can just print trillies, and where does all this money go? No one, or currency, because it's not money, it's not a store of value. And people are starting to understand this. As gas is going up in price, they're like, oh, gas is going up. Nope, gas hasn't changed. The dollar's going down. And so the intra-elite fighting has begun, and this is what I mean by this. When you have a turning point, let's go back to the 1760s in North America. There was intra-elite fighting. There was this pull of interest between those that were in the American elite class and those that were in the British elite class, even though we were technically British citizens at that point in time. But what occurred is you had this Ohio River Valley interest, and people started to move their capital over to the Ohio River Valley. Basically they started to land speculate. That's essentially what started to occur. It was all this land speculation started to occur, and they were like, hey, if we could start moving westward, if you will, this will pump our land values. And I know what the average person was taught in high school, civ class or whatever, was something along the tune of they wanted freedom from the king and taxes, and they started to tax tea at 6%, and people lost their crap and they started doing crazy things. And it's kind of true, but not really. What actually occurred was that there was a group of elites that were in the 5%, if you will. And they were willing to do things to better their own stature, and they were willing to sell it to the 95%. And most people have this view of history, are well, the 99% versus the 1%, and this trajectory upward of the common man. And that's just not how things worked. That's just not how things have ever worked. Like the story of history is not the 99% versus the 1%. The story of history is the 5% versus the 1% when things get bad, and then there's intra-elite fighting. Here's my example. Elon Musk buys Twitter last week, or is in the process of buying Twitter. I don't think the deal is officially closed at this point. It's May 2nd, 2020, or 2022. Lots of twos there. So Elon Musk has gotten to a spot where he's like, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just going to buy the freaking company, right? And so what you're starting to see is people like Peter Thiel. You're starting to see people like Michael Saylor promoting the Bitcoin thing. You're actually starting to see people like, I can't stand this guy, but you got like this guy, Ted Cruz, and he's like, let's have Bitcoin, used on Capitol Hill. Like, it's just a slap in the face of like these American elites who have obtained their power and stature because they have access, such close proximity to the currency printer, right? Like if you're close to the guys that can just print it or loan it at 0% rates and make all these decisions and front run it, like that's what's up. So what you're starting to see is that you're starting to see this thing break down. Obviously, you had Trump defect from the elites in 2015, right before the election when he started running, and prior to that, Trump is a lefty. Like that's he spent his entire lifetime basically like funding Democratic campaigns, and then at some point in time he's like, you know what, I just don't like the trajectory that we're on, and so he defects and he creates really the first large populist movement that we've seen in America in a long time. So what's occurring is you're about to see a lot more intra-elite fighting. Is we'll split into two. I'm not talking like right and left. I'm starting to talk like the Thiels and the Musks and the people that build things that have the control over atoms are going to start to control or are going to start to fight with people who have control over people and over the populace. And then that's going to cause severing of your society. So here's what happened last week. Musk buys Twitter, announces he's buying Twitter, becomes official, and then the Biden administration counters it with the Ministry of Truth. So now we've got like this very like 1984 George Orwell like thing going on right now where it's like, oh, now we have the Ministry of Truth and it's underneath the DHS, as Department of Homeland Security. So that essentially allows them to have an enforcement arm. Basically, you're going to have a SWAT team. Like many SWAT teams. Even the Department of Agriculture, for example, has SWAT teams. IRS has SWAT teams. All of we live in a welfare warfare state, and it's pretty much at the end of its rope. I mean, there's more time left on it for sure. There's more time, but like you're starting to see, like your current elites have gotten so dumb and so like weak and so out of touch with how like the world actually works that they're like, oh, Russia's doing things we don't like, we're gonna sanction them, and like you're like your American plebs like or but like what's coming? $8 gas is coming. Like that's what's coming. And so so you're gonna like food. Your food's gonna spike. Like it'll probably double between now and Christmas. Food will probably double, and then the average dude that'll help the populist movement, but it's going to get the counter elite who go, you know what? I could increase my stature here, my status, if I counterpunch against these current, like, absolutely idiotic elites. And so what is about to happen is intra-elite fighting. You're going to start to see them, whereas they were moving in lockstep through the 80s, through the 90s. Think about 9/11, right? 9/11 occurs. There's a lot of weird things that go on. Like, can we talk about Building 7? No, don't talk about. Okay, cool. It sounds good. So there's a lot of weird things, right, that occur there. But all the elites are like, they're all on the same page. They all got the same thing out of it. Halliburton got a lot of drilling contracts out of it. Military contractors got their thing out of it. People got permission to go operate in Ukraine, Syria, Libya, Iraq, all these different places. Afghanistan and all the other stands that we can't spell or pronounce or know where they are on a map. Like all these things started to occur, but the average American guy has no clue about what's going on here. But then the money printer started to run, and so but they were moving in lockstep. There was no one coming out going like, yo, I'm against this. That was in the elite class. Sure, you had Ron Paul, but Ron Paul is not really truly an elite. And by an elite, I mean like it is something that you're more likely born into. Yes, you can earn your way into it. It's obviously more than a net worth of $10 million, more like $100 million. It's a very small social club. Think like your Dr. Fauci's, your Bill Gateses, your political operatives, like your Bidens, like those type of people, your Bushes, their kids, the Clintons, their kids, the Obamas, their kids. you know, like even in the business world, you've got, you know, like people that went to Harvard, Princeton, like that group of Ivy League, like those types of people. And so we've gotten that spot in our culture where like it's obvious that they're just raping and pillaging your entire nation. Like you're getting to a spot where like, you can't even make new cars in your country because you've allowed them to go so crazy with the EPA. You've allowed them to go so crazy with like what it takes to actually hire and like build things and like consume. Like it's just gotten to a spot where if you are really serious about doing stuff, you've moved to the digital space. You're not even attempting. I mean, hats off to Elon, but like you're not even really attempting to bend metal and like can form atoms in a way where you're creating value for other human beings. At this point in time, you're like, okay, I see the writing on the wall. Like, don't try too hard, because heaven forbid, like they just shut you down one day. Like you could have a $1 billion company and it could be in Shanghai, export and import and doing great for 20 years. And then out of nowhere, you're like, oh, guess what? You're sitting in the wrong spot. Turns out China's not the place to be right now, right? So intra-elite fighting is what's going to occur. This will lead to a Caesar-like character, a Caesar-like upbringing, not a Trump, not a DeSantis, a Caesar Caesar's famous because during the decline of the Roman Empire, it was unstoppable. The empire was in decline, and there's a lot of reasons. In the Western world, we're in decline because we literally just got fake and gay, and there's no way to really reverse it until you get like complete collapse and savage, like acts of savagery, where, you know, like really you return back to like a really hard culture of warriors and pioneers, and, you know, people like, you didn't want to mess with an American in 1800, okay? Like you didn't want to mess with an American in 1875. You know, odds are he went through the Civil War, or at least went through the famines of the Civil War. These people were not fake and gay. They were not soft. These people were very, very tough. But the Western world has just, you know, we've progressed. Like my entire life, it's just been obvious. It's like, you know, like I remember like I got my license in like 2004, and I remember like reading about tier 2 or tier 1 and how they're going to add all this exhaust stuff to these emissions on diesel trucks and stuff. And I remember my buddy saying like, dude, remember these days, because these are the days of the muscle truck, man. They're going away. And like we've just been on this trajectory of just making everything safer, faker, gayer, and now we're at this spot where like we're about to have digital ID cards so that, you know, people can track you, they can track you, and people feel safe. Just the whole, I don't even want to go down that road, because ultimately what happens here in Rome is they're on this downward trajectory because things got so good and it was so easy to become wealthy. And it is, even in today's society, like it is so easy. Like we've built just this amazing system that no matter what you do to it, it just seems to just keep on putting around. Like the USSR is just continuing to float, no matter how much, you know, collective communism we throw at this thing. It just continues to roll. However, this is obviously in its stages of breaking down, and there's no real putting it back together. Caesar's famous because Rome was on this trajectory, but what he did, he bought them another 100 years. They didn't really go back up, but he was able to come in and go, look, we've got these wealth disparities. And without being a total socialist, he was able to say, you know, someone like Bill Gates, we need to put him on trial. You know, like there's some stuff there. And, you know, all that land that he's bought, we need to redistribute it. And we need to redistribute it to the chuds, the welders, the blue collar, the guys that can help build our society into a great society, the guys that are going to actually put the stones on the aqueducts so that we can have hot tubs, because they did, you know, indoor plumbing. I mean, that's something that didn't really even come back in America until like late 1800s, 1900, early 1900s. I mean, but Rome, like 2,000 years ago, like they got indoor plumbing, man. And so Caesar's famous for this. He's also famous because he conquers lots of things, and he crosses the Rubicon. He does all these things that really, like at that time, changed the trajectory of Rome for the moment. And his family ruled Rome for 100 years after his death. He's also famous because he conquers this particular area, and they find this chest with all these letters written from the Senate back home that had basically, they were conspiring against Caesar. and his legions and everything like that. And so his main guys find it and they're like, yo, bro, we got all the data. This is like Caesar's CIA, right? They've got all this stuff. He's like, dude, we got it all. We're going to be able to go home and just start hanging bodies, baby. And Caesar's like, burn it. Send it out to sea, drape it in oil, light it on fire, push it out to sea. Bygones are bygones. We've won. And everyone's like, yeah, bro, here's the deal. Yeah, we won, true. We just conquered this. We conquered this other army. Great. But these are our enemies back home, and these are the letters in this box because we conquered the king, we got all his data, and Caesar's like, yeah, it's not going to help us, man. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, all of that is over. There is no other army. We have destroyed them. And so what occurs is you've got these conspirators, and you've actually, your current elites are actually begging for this. Lindsey Graham recently said, is there no Brutus?
Is there Brutus in Russia? The only way this ends, my friend, is for somebody in Russia to take this guy out.
Referring to basically Caesar, which was Putin. And he's like, is there no Brutus, somebody who can essentially assassinate Putin on our behalf? It's like, well, look, Lindsey, if you want to do this, send SEAL teams, man. Go do the job yourself, bro. Like, if you want to go, start World War III because you're too fake and gay to like actually, deal with another world power properly, and you want to just be this boomer idiot who has this vision of like, oh, this is America in the 1980s. This is the height of Top Gun. Like, we have this ability to just create things and build things and like, make carburetors and fuel injectors and tire. Like, no, Lindsey, we don't do that anymore. America can't do that. We're an importer. That's what we do. And we send fake dollars. And so what occurs is you've got this, like, these guys that basically they assassinate Caesar. Immediately, within the day, their homes are burned, they're killed, their families are tormented and tortured. Like, it was so obvious that it was like when Caesar died, that it was so bad for Rome. Everyone knew it. It was like immediate. It was like, yo, why did you do this? Watch for incoming American Caesar. That's what's coming next. 5 years out, 7 years out, something like that, where it's not going to be like in your 24 election. Like, it's not like, that's not where your Caesar is coming from. Your Caesar is coming from, I have the power of the chuds, meaning like, think Trump tards, like think like assault gun wielding Trump tard, like blue collar worker types that the email managerial class is sitting there on Twitter going like, oh my gosh, these people need to wear masks and get vaxxed and do their thing. Like, they need to listen. We need to shut down the economy. What's the big deal? Amazon brings everything to my house. Like your Caesar-like character is going to be able to unite the muscle of your nation. And the muscle of your nation is actually the strength, the backbone of your nation are these people that build things. These workers, these blue collar workers, these people that, are maybe they're hunters and fishers, they drive pickup trucks. These type of people like me, like I'm a chud. Like, these are the people that will rally underneath this Caesar-like character. He will appeal to the peasantry very, very well. And his power will come from his populism, something that Trump laid the groundwork for. And he will basically go, hey, we could do the election thing, but we could also do the just lighting everything on fire thing, cutting the energy grid thing off, and hanging bodies thing. And what will happen, and it seems like it's impossible now, but what will happen as your food shortages start to come in, as your fuel starts to come in, as your new car, the only place in the world where the waiting list for a new car was longer than the American waiting list right now in the Western world was Soviet Russia. As you start to get to the spot of the collapse of the Soviet Empire, which we are a Soviet empire and we're about to collapse, we're getting to the spot where, just our military budget alone is larger than the GDP of the next 10 nations. Like, it's insane, right? Like, or the budget, I don't know. We essentially spend more on our military than the next 10 nations combined spend on their defense. So it's just like we're not investing in like growing domestic organic food and like making the cost of energy close to zero, so that manufacturing and like creating a new renaissance and a base layer of like money that can't be manipulated, that is like just and pure, and like I mean, yeah, that's occurring in the private market. You see Bitcoin making an attempt at becoming that store of value, but we don't really know how this is going to go at this point in time. It's just too early. Everything at this point in time is relatively a speculation. So what you want to watch for is inter-elite fighting, and then you want to watch for this Caesar-like character that's going to rise from the fallout. And there has to be fallout for this to occur. There has to be real bad times for this to occur. But that's the next moves. And if we're fortunate, the decline of the West is obvious. The West is eventually gonna cease to exist. Things that really matter, like brute force, things that haven't been conquered, like the Taliban, for 1,000 years, will eventually overtake the West. Just because their tactics are better and are longer term. Like if we could come back 150 years from now, you would probably notice a world that looks very different. Nation states at that point in time will probably have fallen and collapsed. Things will be more localized. I think the world will be pretty incredible, actually, 150 years from now. But we could also enter into a dark age. And so look for intra-elite fighting. You're going to watch it with Musk. You're seeing all of the blue checks on Twitter right now starting to sort themselves. They're getting really crazy. I mean, it's been like 2 or 3 years now where they're like, oh yeah, 7-year-olds should be able to change their sex and stuff. You're like, these people can't even buy cigarettes, okay? So, like, yeah, they're not even allowed to get a tattoo. We're going to talk about letting them chop things off. Like, it's getting really weird. But that's how things will go from here, is that you're going to see a lot more intra-elite fighting. Elites will start to fight, and then it'll be time to pick sides. And they will use the 95% to accomplish their ends. And I don't necessarily recommend like partaking in any of this stuff. Like, I recommend just doing you, sitting back, getting as far away from society as you can, getting as off-grid as you can, and letting this thing like work itself out. Because it's not gonna last forever, but it could be a decade of time where like this gets really freaking gnarly. So intra-elite fighting happening at the moment, actually. Like economic chaos is inbound. Like that's obviously has been set. Like that is coming. The train is on its way. There's no stopping it at this point in time. It's just a matter of time. And then you should be watching for this Caesar-like character that people will be rallying around. It could be even a group at this point in time. It could be a group of Caesar-like characters, and they're going to pop up and they're going to basically look at like things like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, maybe even the Supreme Court, and they're going to laugh at it. And they're going to be like, yeah, I mean, where's your real power come from? And your Nancy Pelosi's, your Chuck Schumer's, things like that. I know it's a longer video, but at this point, if you're into it, you're like, okay, I'm starting to see how this works. What's going to happen is you're going to see things like the Navy SEALs might defect and back this guy, right? You might see like the Army might go this way, but the Navy might go this way. And so, you're going to start to see this start to occur, and you're gonna be like, damn. So intra-elite fighting right now, Caesar-like character happening, and then at the end of this, to totally wrap it, at the end of this, the way forward really is going to be self-custody of individuals' assets, empowering the individual. I think that this is a takeaway here. Watch for, they're going to have to cut the populace in on a better deal. The chuds, mainly, the kulaks, if you will, the small business owners. That's how this Caesar-like character will get his power. Because what he'll do is he'll basically just make deals. Hey guys, if I rise to power, I'm gonna go after these guys like Gates. I'm gonna take their crap. I'm gonna divide it out and freaking, I'm gonna do these things. I'm gonna go attack these 1%ers that are obviously destroying your society. I'm gonna put Fauci up on a freaking block. All right, I'm gonna go do this. And the chuds are gonna be like, hell yeah, let's freaking do this. And the libs are gonna lose their mind, but at the end of the day, they don't have any power. Their power gets turned off. Literally, their electrical, like they got emails and keyboards. They don't have any power. The power comes with guys in pickup trucks and assault weapons. I mean, as seen by the Taliban. You have the world's best military in the world, so we're told. Drones, the whole thing, can't beat these guys in Toyota pickup trucks. All right. So what occurs is like they just pull out and they try to save face. And actually, you're starting to see the brutes. Like, you're starting to see like these rough and tough culture of the Chinese roll in and go, hey, Taliban, like instead of us showing up and trying to force your women into gender studies and take off their veils and trying to force you into our fake and gay Western culture, you guys just do what you do, man. Like, do your goat herding and stuff. Meanwhile, we're gonna be up this mountain range. We're gonna be pulling some like lithium and stuff like that. Don't worry about what we're doing. We'll make sure you guys get paid, and we'll build the infrastructure. We'll build your roads. We'll build your bridges. We'll build you whatever you need. We're just going to be mining the minerals and extorting the minerals. Are you guys cool with that? And then, yeah, why not, right? As opposed to the U.S., where it's like, we're going to destroy all of your systems and your bridges and all that stuff, but at the same time, we're going to like force your children to become gay like us. And so, intra-elite fighting. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're gonna have self-custody of assets. That's gonna be like a big part of this. And then you're looking for speculation at this point in time, but you're looking for this Caesar-like character to rise up the ranks. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the likes. I will see you down there. I like the conversation that we get there, and some of the really good comments. I always try to pin one of them where I'm like, yo, this is a good conversation starter. I love seeing those threads. So thank you guys for being here, and until next video. Peace.